Thank you. Good evening. I call to order the virtual regular meeting of the City of Lakewood City Council on April 13th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul,
Here.
Abel,
Here.
Vincent.
Here, still here.
Gutwein,
Here.
Vita,
He's muted.
There we go. I'm here.
Skilling,
Here.
Springsteen,
Here.
Franks,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
LeBure,
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody who's tuning in live or going to check us out a little bit later on down the road. This is, I think, our third time doing this, so please bear with us. But it's a cool evening because we're going to implement public comment into this meeting. And so we'll have some further instructions as we move down the line. We are going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we will have a moment of silent prayer after the pledge. Channel 8 should have a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to our Channel 8 team for making that happen as well. So item 4 is a presentation, and we did leave that on just to make sure everybody knew that has been rescheduled. Last meeting, we decided we really want to focus on things that are pressing and health, safety, and welfare related to COVID-19. There's going to be one adjustment, and that will be the motion to extend the emergency declaration. We will take that on after public comment and before the executive report. So this tonight, we are introducing live public comment through Zoom for the first time. Please bear with us. The phone number to call in is on the agenda, which can be found on our website at lakewood.org/council meetings. If you would like to speak, feel free to call in and be placed on hold until public comment, which is right now, but we'll also have two other opportunities. One after the consent agenda or for the consent agenda, and the other will be for the different ordinances. Please do not request to speak until we get to the comment portion of the meeting. If you request to speak before that, it will be cleared and you will have to re-request again once we give the go-ahead. If you are calling in and watching, please turn down your computer when it is your time to speak. So this is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the City Council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the City Council. I ask that all persons calling in observe the same decorum of a City Council meeting held in person in the chambers. To participate via phone, please call 1-669-900-9128, 1-669-900-9128, and when prompted, enter the meeting ID 701-651-889. The ID is 701-651-889. There will be 3 opportunities for public participation this evening. Once during public comment, which is now, consent agenda, and again during ordinances on second readings. Microphones will be muted for all residents calling in. Residents can press *9 to raise their hand. So *9 to raise your hand to be recognized. You'll be prompted when it is your turn to speak. Please state your name, city of residence, and address clearly for the record. Do not press *9 if you do not wish to speak on that particular agenda item. We'll get through it. If you meant to speak at a different one, we'll certainly go back and make sure you have that opportunity. As custom, you'll have 3 minutes to address council. I will announce when you have 30 seconds and again when your time is up. After your time is up, I will ask you to wrap that up, and you'll probably have a 5-second countdown from there and you will be cut off. I do not have that capability, but our timekeeper and the person taking the phone calls will do that. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Callers' microphones will be automatically muted until the resident is prompted to speak. Press *9 now to raise your hand to be recognized. You will be prompted when it is your turn to speak. Please remember, and this is important, state your name, city of residency, and address clearly for the record. That is also in case you have a follow-up, so we can make sure that we can get any questions or concerns answered for you via the follow-up. So, next caller, please, Bernie.
Mayor, we have one caller in the queue, but they have not pressed *9 to request to speak.
Okay. So caller in the queue, if you can hear us and you'd like to speak under general public comment, please hit *9 now. If not, we will take you to our next opportunity. Madam Clerk.
The caller has raised their hand. They should be unmuted.
Okay. Good evening.
Hello.
You are on. Please state your name and address for the record, and this is general public comment.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. My name is Bill Schroer. I live in Lakewood at 2307 South Gray Drive. I sent my written comments to you earlier. Lakewood can take the following actions to ameliorate the economic effects of the pandemic. These measures are more than first aid, but represent opportunities to establish economic sustainability, a social condition that, at a minimum, maintains economic security, public safety, and social cohesion within a community. Whether or not the economy skyrockets back to where it was, the following measures are necessary to prepare for subsequent economic threats and emergencies we're likely to face over the next decade from numerous potential causes. First measure, merge Lakewood's economic development and sustainability functions into one department to pursue economic sustainability strategic objectives. The city's environmental sustainability knowledge bank will be useful in identifying the following. 1, industries, products, and services that offer business and employment potential within the new economic conditions, such as composting, local food production and preparation, urban proximate small-scale farms, goods reuse exchanges, and expanded repair services for appliances, electronics, and machines. They can also identify number 2, no or low-cost conservation and waste reduction habits that save money around the household or at work. And number 3, in identifying household self-sufficiency practices such as sewing, tailoring, gardening, and canning. Second measure, use city assets to achieve economic sustainability. For example, some parks within Lakewood system may be areas to establish community gardens and food processing sites. A few city facilities can be converted or upgraded to be canning centers for public use to preserve surplus from home and community gardens. Third measure, evaluation of municipal functions to include formation of municipal cooperatives for products and services in which a nonprofit self-sustaining cooperative can deliver better and less expensively to the public so that economic sustainability strategic objectives are achieved. And then finally, the fourth measure, formation of a Lakewood Economic Sustainability Council to accumulate resources and guide decision-making. I appreciate your time. I just want to do a shout out to all of you and all the city staff. You know, we hear all this stuff from the national and state level. But
30
you're
seconds.
where the rubber meets the road, and we appreciate what you're doing. I'll be happy to contribute, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroer. We appreciate you weighing in, and thank you for sending your email.
Yes, sir,
Madam-
and thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next.
That is all the callers for public comment.
Okay. So we will now close public comment. And at our previous, let me turn off my timer here, sorry. At our council meeting, I believe it was March 27th, please don't quote me, but or maybe previous to that, we enacted the emergency declaration that was set to have a revisit tonight. And we are still engaged in the emergency situation. The governor has stated till April 26th, and we may see that extended further. So I'm going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem if he would make a motion to extend this. And I believe you are, Mayor Pro Tem, you are unmuted.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move to continue the duration of the proclamation or declaration of state of disaster resulting from the coronavirus/COVID-19 pandemic issued by the city manager on March 17th, 2020, pursuant to section 1.27.060 of the Lakewood Municipal Code, and extended to April 13th, 2020 by a majority vote of the City Council on March 23rd, 2020, with the declaration now scheduled to terminate on April 27th, 2020, unless further extended or terminated by the City Council prior to that date.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from council on this? Any questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Seeing none, please still raise your hand because not everybody has a sign. So if you are in support, please raise your hand. And if you have your sign, please do both. Okay, so I have a mix. I'm going to go ahead and say that there are 11 ayes and 0 nays. If I have that wrong, please let me know.
Mayor, Mayor, you have that wrong. I was hoping that we'd get a little discussion before we voted on this. I know it's pretty straightforward, but I was hoping to at least get a record as to why we need to extend this.
Okay,
And I'm not saying we don't, but it just seems to me that so the public knows why we're extending this, there ought to be some, presentation on this rather than just a slam dunk.
Yep.
And so I tried to get my button pushed quick enough to make a comment, but you already took the vote. So
Okay.
That's what I have to say.
okay. So 1 second, let me lower the hands, please. Ms.
I mean,
Hudson,
Mayor, this is a big deal. This is a big deal, extending our emergency powers here. And I think it deserves more than just a vote without any discussion or any comment from our city manager or anything.
Mayor, yes, I would ask that our city attorney describe what the declaration of emergency actually does for the city.
1 second, Mr. Cox, and I will unmute you.
Mayor, could I just ask for a quick clarification?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Before we do another raise hand, up or down thing, can we just have that clarified whether you want that electronically or physically raising your hand? Because that might help.
Yeah. I'm going to ask that you do both if you can. I need electronically because I can read it off. It's hard to kind of look through. Everybody's scattered, and if I have somebody on a different screen. So, and I will certainly reread. I will reread the votes and make sure that if there was something that didn't weigh in. So again, so the question is, why are we continuing? And one of the reasons going in is that it has been extended at the state level. I will turn to Mr. Cox and ask you to further weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you'll recall that under 1.27 of the code, that's the chapter which indicates that the city manager has the ability to proclaim or declare a state of emergency, state of disaster. And upon that proclamation, the lengthy list of potential powers and authority becomes effective. So I don't think there was any question that it was necessary at the outset, and certainly necessary when it was extended by the city council. We had a lengthy discussion at the first meeting about how it gets extended and what's necessary. We're following that path tonight. At the last meeting, when it was extended, the council did discuss extending it in smaller chunks rather than an indefinite period of time. It was to be done in 2-week increments. So that's how we got to where we are now with the expiration set for the date of the next meeting. But I would just remind everyone that among other things, the powers that are made available to the city include the ability to waive or suspend or change or shorten procedural requirements, notice requirements, things that are standard procedure for taking action by the council under normal circumstances. In many emergencies like this one, things need to be done on a quicker time frame without the opportunity for the formalities that are normally required. So the ability to waive and suspend and change meeting procedures, procedures for taking action. Meetings themselves, we now have an ordinance that allows for virtual meetings during an emergency. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We'd have to look back at the language of that, but as long as the emergency exists, there's need in this emergency. There's need for the ability to continue doing virtual meetings, and then there is the rest of the list. Most of these powers have not had to be invoked, but they're available, and includes such things as being able to close off parts of the city, closing down public buildings. Some of these things are being discussed at various levels, but the range of powers available to the city manager, I would submit, are still at this point where we have not hit what is projected as the peak of the virus in the community. I would submit that the benefits of continuing the emergency declaration far outweigh the benefits of terminating it at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Councillor Abel?
There we go. Just wanted to ensure that the ordinance that we passed 2 weeks ago remains unchanged. Is that correct, Mr. Cox? You could nod. There you go. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And I want to say that I think the city manager has been very judicious in the use of the powers we've given her. And I will be voting for the measure or holding up my yes card.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I offer one more advantage
Please.
to being under this declaration of emergency? As I understand it, due to the fact that we are in that declaration, if you will, it allows us to be eligible for some funds from the state. So we're hoping that we'll be able to reimburse some of the costs that are associated with this particular virus. Think about some of the equipment and materials that we've had to purchase for the police department, for other employees, personal protective equipment, et cetera. So being under this declaration of emergency makes us eligible for reimbursements. And yes, we are keeping very strong tabs on every expense that has been made so that we can be favorable to the funding gods.
Thank you. Councillor Springsteen?
Just for the record, expanding on the advantages and risks, what funds exactly are we eligible for, and from whom, and in what amounts, and what are any downsides or risks with extending? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
If you'll allow me, I would ask Deputy City Manager Ben Goldstein to help me with the funding sources. Ben, I know you're the one who's keeping close track of those with our finance department. Can you help identify who those funders, the potential funders would be, please?
Yeah, so most of them would be pass-through grants. The funding seems to be all originating at the federal level. Municipalities of Lakewood size will most likely get their funds as a pass-through through Jefferson County, in our case. Larger municipalities, over 500,000 residents, under the fourth funding bill that was passed, the CARES Act is what it's commonly referred to. Some of them will be receiving direct funding. There are talks about doing additional funding packages that would go directly to local governments like Lakewood. So we're really hoping for something like that. But everything will be distributed on a reimbursement basis for core expenses related to our COVID response, or directly related to our response. So at this point, there's no reimbursement funds, for instance, for us having the rec centers closed. It would be more funds for police overtime or something like that, or the purchase of laptops so employees can continue to deliver services remotely. Even that one, we don't know. That's a good example of an expense we're tracking really closely, but have to submit it for reimbursement. So those are some examples of the various funds. We're still waiting for additional guidance at this point. That's been one frustration of ours and every other state and municipality, is that the guidance just hasn't really been written yet. So we're all still kind of holding on.
Councillor Springsteen?
And just to follow up on that, then, given the fact that it's tough to know exactly what's going to be reimbursed, how are we tracking that, and who's tracking that, and how do we submit that for reimbursement?
Again, that will be submitted through the county at this point. We're hoping for additional bills at the federal level, where we might be able to submit directly. There are some funding sources that we might be able to submit directly to FEMA for, but at this point, it looks like most of our reimbursement will go through Jefferson County. To get down into the details, when someone codes an expense in our system, that expense is being tracked with a special code, a COVID-19 code, so that we can go ahead and track it. But there's a whole lot more detail for significant expenses that's being booked at the department level. One of the things that we've learned from other cities who have dealt with stuff like this, or from past experiences in Lakewood, is that documentation is key. So we have to document not only the amount, but the why and the where, and that we attempted to do competitive bids and all sorts of other stuff that goes along with it. But again, we don't have final guidance, so it's really important that we continue to do this work. And as Kathy mentioned, the disaster declaration, or the emergency powers for her and for the state for that purpose, is beneficial for Colorado as a whole to continue to get funds.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Skilling and a second by Councillor Vincent. All in favor, please raise your hand. And if you have your card, please show your card. Counselor Harrison, can you please raise your hand, or are you a no?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I see 10 and the mayor hasn't voted.
I'm sorry, I can't see Counselor Harrison. Where am I?
Counselor Harrison.
Oh, there she is. Okay, all right. So it passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Again, 11 ayes, 0 nays. If that is not the case, I'm going to lower everybody's hands, and please re-raise and let me know if I got that wrong. It'd be great if there was like an all lower button. All right. So council, we got that right. 11 ayes, 0 nays. To continue. Thank you. So next up, we'll go to Ms. Hodson for the executive report.
Great, thank you. I just have a couple of items I wanted to mention as follow-up from our previous meeting, and they are all related to the coronavirus. And before I start, I will tell you, if you don't have your arrow, you will be getting it in the mail very shortly. Donna Rett put those together, and she purposefully made those Easter colors, if you're wondering why they're the colors they are. And please check your mail tomorrow if you didn't get yours already. All right, so the three things I wanted to talk about. The first one is around a grant that we're calling the City of Lakewood COVID-19 Impact Grant. Remember, we discussed this at our last meeting. We had talked about the Lakewood Community Grant Program and the fact that that is underway. It's funded currently at $100,000 and will be reviewed by the committee, by an evaluation committee on April 14th. You directed staff, because this is one of your 4 pillars, you directed staff to create a program that would be a one-time only funding program for our nonprofits to apply for that did work specifically around the COVID-19 community response. So I'd like to recognize Mary Ruther for working very quickly. I didn't think we'd have a program to show you already, but we do. So let me just give you the highlights and let you know that you'll be looking at this for first reading on April 27th. So this is just a heads up. No action tonight, but I'd like you to start thinking about this if you would. So again, you'll remember that this is modeled very closely to our Lakewood Community Grant Program, which has been in existence for about 5 years. The guidelines associated with this COVID Impact Grant, however, will be only considered for the purchase of goods and supplies or the provision of services. Funds cannot be utilized for personnel services. Remember, you asked us to do that at the last meeting. Another guideline is the grant application and process of evaluation will closely follow that of the community grant program. And finally, as soon as this is approved, we're going to push this out to potential nonprofits and give them a pretty tight time frame. We're thinking about a week to 2 weeks to apply, submit their applications, and then we'll make the decisions will be made by the evaluation panel, so we can get that money out and get it to the community to start helping to serve our Lakewood community. I'll tell you a little bit about the evaluation criteria because I want you to hear how it's so closely aligned to the COVID response. Again, it can't be used for personnel expenses. The goods must demonstrate relief for Lakewood residents as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. The criteria needs to demonstrate a clear understanding that the funds will be used to enhance capacity or augment efforts already being conducted by the organization related to COVID-19. And there needs to be a demonstration that Lakewood residents will be the recipients of the services and the goods. We need to be able to see clear goals and impact measures and reasonable program costs. So that's pretty similar. I also have a copy of the proposed application form. And again, that's pretty similar to the other grant program, that's been pretty tried and true over the last several years. As it relates to the time frame, first reading again will be in 2 weeks on April 27th. The main issue that you'll need to be thinking about is how much money do you want to designate for this particular program? Again, it's a one-time program. It's it's only to be used for COVID relief. And first reading is on the 27th. Second reading is May 11th. On the May 11th second reading, we're going to propose that that be treated as an emergency ordinance so that we don't have to wait the additional 30 days before the money can be freed up. So we'll still do the first reading and second reading, which will be a public hearing, but we'll ask that that be allowed to be done in an emergency setting so that, again, so the money can be available right away to these nonprofits. Okay, so in the proposal, we didn't know how much you want to put. And at our last meeting, we had the span between 100,000 and 500,000 with all kinds of opinions in between. So just to err on the side of caution, the proposal you're going to see identifies 100,000 for this one-time grant. You will have the opportunity on second reading to decide if that's the number you want to stay with or if you want to go for another number. So that's just kind of a placeholder, the $100,000. It's up to you to decide if you want to increase that or keep it where it is. We will, let's see, this is due to our city clerk, I believe, this Thursday. So Mary will have all of the details all completed, although she's done most of the heavy lifting already. And then it'll be posted so you can see it in advance of the first reading on next 2 weeks, which is April 27th. Sound good? Everybody good? Good, thanks for the nods. The second one, on the second pillar, you wanted us to look at some kind of communication or surveying of our business community to see what is it that they need, I think were the actual words. So I'd like to tell you about a program that's underway, and this was developed by our economic development team led by Robert Smith. And this is a program called the Lakewood Economic Recovery Task Force. The whole idea here is to bring together about 24 individuals who represent our business community, from folks from our largest employers and from our smallest businesses. So to get a real nice cross section of our business folks. This is business leaders in industry professionals who will help the community shape recovery activities in the short, medium, and long runs. So we're going to put a meeting together, and we believe that our businesses know the best way to move forward in the face of this enormous challenge. So I'll give you more information as that becomes available, but I'd like to recognize Robert Smith and his team for putting this together, and since you just directed us to do this last week. Good? Ready to move? Thank you. And finally, I want to talk about a really interesting conundrum when we're in the middle of this pandemic and we're also in the middle of April. Well, what do you do in April? That's when you start gearing up to hire your part-time staff to work in the parks, in the pools, in your special events, heritage, culture, and the arts programs. So the question is, do we do that? Do we go forward with our hiring, or are we going to be able to hold some of these congregating kind of events this summer? So we're thinking about things like, what about summer camps? What about the swim beach and the campground? What about outdoor pools? And all of the summer events that we hold that our community loves so much? Special events, how about our concert series? And finally, festivals. So we're working diligently with the community resources staff, trying to be as agile as we can, not making commitment. You sure know that we don't want to spend money that we don't have, especially if programs aren't going to go. We're in direct communication with NRPA, which is a National Parks and Recreation Association, also with the CPRA, which is Colorado Park and Recreation Association, to see what other agencies are doing, because we're all in this spot. This is the time of year where we actually compete with our neighbors to hire some of these young professionals who are coming into the workforce. I've been interacting with the city managers all over the state with this same conundrum, not being sure exactly what we're going to be able to do as it relates to big groups of people and encouraging people to be together. So that's just for your information. It's just something really interesting to think about, because I don't know if we'll be able to hold big group events this summer. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know. And with that, Mayor, I believe that concludes my comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hodson. There was a question, however, I'd like to, if we're going to have more discussion, if we could wait till general business and come back, that'd be fantastic. So we will do that. Okay. Next up, we have the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions and first reading ordinances. There is no first reading ordinance tonight. For the purpose, I'm sorry, my script is a little bit different. Because we have only one resolution, I'll ask the clerk to please read the consent agenda into the record, and I'll open the public hearing on the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of item 7. Item 7, accepting minutes of the boards and commissions. Lakewood Advisory Commission Full Commission Meeting, June 19th, 2019, and Lakewood Advisory Commission Full Commission Meeting, July 17, 2019.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing on item 7. Do we have anybody in the queue who wishes to speak on the proposed item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I'll close public comment and I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem Skilling for a motion, please.
Mayor, I move for the approval of the council minutes, which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, please raise your hand and your sign. Okay, and looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councilor Harrison is 9. Sharon is 10, and I'm an 11. So that passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. And I do apologize. Some of you aren't pushing your button and raising. So I'm trying to do double counting. But we're good now. Okay, will the clerk please read the next item on the agenda?
Item 8, ordinance O-2020-7, declaring the intent of the city of Lakewood to acquire interest in property for public purposes for the construction of a multi-use path along the north side of RTD's W line and authorizing negotiations with property owners, acceptance of conveyance instruments, and condemnation of real property interest, subject to further council approval.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing on item 8, ordinance 0-2020-7. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this one?
There is no one in the queue, Mayor.
Okay, so let's go to questions. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I would like to know if the properties that it would be involved, if the owners have been contacted, and do they realize that it was put on the agenda for tonight?
Thank you. Ms. Hodson?
Excuse me, yes, I know that Adrian Stanchu is standing by somewhere. And Adrian, can you hear me?
Mr. Stanchu.
Oh, here he comes.
There he is. I lost you.
Oh, here?
Thank you, Adrian. Adrian, would you mind giving a couple of introductory comments before you answer the question? I'd appreciate that. There he is.
Oh, there he is. Hi.
Good evening. Yes, let me start off with just an overall briefing of what we're asking for here tonight. The project is for a shared use path from Garrison Station to Estes Street. There are 3 properties that are involved, and we're looking to acquire permanent easements as well as temporary construction easements. Public Works staff has actually been in constant contact with all 3 property owners since they received their notice of the project survey in 2018, so over a year and a half now. There's been numerous contacts. The Middle property has already conveyed to us the permanent easement that we needed through their development review process. We do still need a small temporary construction easement from them. And then the two properties on either end, on Garrison and on Estes, we need both permanent and temporary construction easements from them. I do want to point out that condemnation action would specifically require further council action. And this is actually more conservative than any of our surrounding jurisdictions. Everybody else just does a simple intent ordinance, as we're doing, without having to take further action in order to proceed with condemnation. Also, just to put things in perspective, I've looked at the numbers for City of Lakewood for the past 2 decades, that is, almost 20 years. We've acquired approximately 267 properties. Out of those, we've had to initiate court filings only 8 times. That's less than 3% of the acquisitions that we've had to go to court with. And on all of those, we have finished the process with a successful resolution with the property owners. We have never, not even once, gone through the entire condemnation process. Especially these days, I can tell you that it's very likely that we may need to start condemnation processes on some properties strictly to deal with the lenders. We have a number of other acquisitions where we've been very successful working with property owners, and now we're stuck in limbo for months at a time trying to get the lenders to move off the dime. So, and we only anticipate that to get worse, quite frankly, with the current situation. That's pretty much for my overall comments, and hopefully I've answered Councilwoman Johnson's question.
Actually, it's brought up some more. Do you have any idea what the cost will be to acquire that land, number one? And number two, are they willing sellers at this point?
I can tell you that all 3 property owners so far have been willing participants in the discussions. As far as the cost, we do not have a cost established yet. This ordinance is really the first step in the acquisition process. The very next step that we're going to take is to hire an appraiser, and they will be putting together appraisals and a fair market value for each of the properties. Actually, by state law and CDOT policies, we're not even allowed to discuss financial matters with the property owners at this point, not until an appraisal is accomplished.
Okay, are they willing sellers though, or is this going to be a heavy-handed type of negotiation?
Based on the communications we've had so far with these 3 property owners, we do not believe that there will be issues with them participating in the acquisitions. Now, obviously, they have not seen any numbers because no values have been presented yet. So we certainly can't guarantee that, and I wouldn't expect that kind of a commitment from them until they do see an actual offer.
Okay.
And I would like to just remind council as an example of what Mr. Stanchu was talking about when dealing with lenders. If you remember when we were dealing with the sidewalk on Sheridan, we had to implement this on one of those larger properties because it was owned by a larger lender, and we kind of had to get their attention because we were really struggling with that. But no condemnation took place, but this same process was started. Councilor Abel.
Yes, the properties, there are 2 apartment buildings and the affordable housing project that was the hospice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How many parking places are we going to be taking out?
We will not be taking out any parking spaces. There should be no impact to the parking of either the Garrison Street property or the 1320, 1325 Everett Court properties. On the easternmost property, the 1305 Estes Street, we will be doing some modifications to their parking lot, and we will be repaving it, but they will not lose any parking spaces.
Isn't their parking lot immediately adjacent to the RTD right-of-way?
It is. That's why we're going to be repaving their lot and shifting some of their spaces. They do have some extra maneuvering space in there that we can use up. Preliminary design shows that we will not be taking any parking spaces, no mature trees.
Okay. And the hospice, are they one of those two properties you said have not come to an agreement yet?
Well, actually, the hospice is the one property that has already conveyed the permanent easement that we need. So all we need are some relatively small temporary construction easements. That property owner has been very much on board. We certainly don't anticipate any problems.
Okay. So when you tell me we won't be taking any parking places, we'll be reconfiguring the existing parking places and resulting in maybe smaller spaces, but the same number?
Actually, the spaces will all be full size. There's a little bit of extra maneuvering area that will be shrunk down, and a small amount of landscaping because we're going to be shifting one of their internal sidewalks up to the north. But they will, all of their parking and maneuvering areas will actually meet all code requirements.
Okay, so it'll be taken out of that island there. That's between the right-of-way and the buildings. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, can I have a motion, please?
I move for the adoption of ordinance 0-2020-7 on second and final reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or further comments? All right. I'm gonna wait. Seeing none, please cast your votes. Please push your hand up and also your other one. All right, we're getting this down. So I have, I'm just going to read them off. It's easier. I have ayes are Franks, Vincent, Gutwein, LeBeer, Skilling, Abel, Harrison, Beta, Johnson, Springsteen, and Paul. That's 11 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you all. And if I missed that, please speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm lowering hands. Does anybody know, is there like a lower all button? Councilor Franks?
When I had our Zoom meeting earlier for Ward, I was able to find one, I thought, but if you don't see it in your drop down, it's not there. But I knew I could mute all. So I'm not sure. It doesn't show on my side, of course.
Yeah. All right. This is working all right. Will the clerk please read item 9 into the record?
Item 9, ordinance O-2020-8, declaring the intent of the city of Lakewood to acquire interest in property for public purposes for the replacement of traffic signal poles, equipment, and curb ramps at the intersection of West Jewel Avenue and South DeFrame Street, and authorizing negotiations with property owners, acceptance of conveyance instruments, and condemnation of real property interest, subject to further council approval.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing on item 9. Is there anybody signed up to speak?
No one has signed up to speak.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing or public comment on item 9. And I will we'll start with questions. Actually, I'm sorry. Mr. Stanshew is going to kick this off and lead us in, and then we can go to questions. Is that accurate, Ms. Hodson? Yes, okay. Mr. Stanshew, welcome back. There he is.
He's muted.
Here we go. So basically, everything that I mentioned for the previous project applies here as far as the process. We've got 4 affected properties in this case, 1 on each corner. I do want to note that the graphics that were part of your package were strictly for the purposes of identifying the properties and the general areas where the project is taking place. They certainly do not represent the size or shape of the easements. That's still under the design stage. In this case, this project is a little bit more recent in the works. Property owners were notified approximately 6 months ago, last fall, of the project. The surveys have been initiated. There have been no additional meetings with the property owners at this point. We are still only partway through the design phase, but the impacts to the properties are actually going to be much less than the previous project. We're looking at, again, permanent and temporary construction easements, but anywhere from 90 to 300 square feet. Parking will not be impacted, and we anticipate that there will be no work inside the fences that are existing, with the possible exception of one utility connection. So all the work is really going to be outside outside of the fences near the intersection in what visually looks like the public right-of-way.
Thank you, Mr. Stanshu. And to remind council and the community, there was a supplemental addendum by Mr. Jay Hutchison that was included in tonight's packet, which really outlined the scope of, the question was, should we be doing these things right now? And so that was a follow-up. And for those that haven't been able to review that, this is a light pole that did blow down and has rotted out from corrosion on its base. And so that is all in tonight's packet if you would like to see more of that. Miss Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. My husband just notified me that someone is trying to get through for public comment on this and they can't get through. So you need to know that. Also, when you're talking about work inside the fences, I'm assuming you're meaning the southeast and southwest. Is that right?
That's correct. With those two properties, actually in the southwest, we don't anticipate any work inside the fence. On the southeast, we're going to try to keep all the work outside the fence. If there is any work inside the fence, it will be strictly for a utility connection, and then the fence will be repaired and replaced in its current condition.
Okay. Are the poles going to go in the very same places that they are now?
I believe the poles are actually going to be at least on the northwest corner. We're looking at relocating the pole further in, away from the actual intersection.
Okay, and again, you spoke with the two owners on the southeast, southwest corners. Are they comfortable with what's going to happen here? Are they? Yeah, go ahead.
I do not at this point have feedback as far as whether they are in support of the project or not. They have been notified of the project, so they are aware of it.
Were they aware that it was on the agenda for tonight?
No, we typically do not notify them specifically about an acquisition ordinance. They were notified approximately 6 months prior. They were notified when the project started. We had surveyors enter their property, so they were notified by letter and had initial contact with surveyors and public works staff.
Okay, this is my own input. May I suggest that when we have something as dramatic as negotiations for condemnation, that the owners should be notified prior, or at least know that it's on a particular agenda. I think that's a very nice courtesy that we can extend.
Thank you.
And the poles, I understand, are aluminum. What will they be replaced with?
I believe we've got public works staff on the line also that can answer some of the more specific design questions. If we can have Mike Whitaker.
Mike Whitaker or Jay Hutchison. Mike, are you on the line?
Yes, he's coming. Just a moment.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Whitaker.
He's muted. There he is.
Yeah, Mike Whitaker.
Good evening, sir. Did you hear the question? And the question pertains to what type of material will, there you are, what type of material will the new poles be?
The existing poles are steel, and the new poles will also be steel.
Okay.
They have a 50-year design life, and unfortunately, with some of the road salts, it's comes a little earlier sometimes.
Okay, and I have one more question. I understand, I've heard that the cost is $475,000. Is that
we're only about 25-30% into the design, so everything right now is just kind of a ballpark. But a typical four-legged intersection runs somewhere around $450,000. So once we get the design refined a little better, we'll have a better estimate.
just for the public's understanding, since we are in a very interesting time economically, is this money that has already been set aside? I think that with that amount of money there, if you could please address that right now.
Yeah, we started a special CIP budget item a couple years ago to set aside money just for this purpose. The signals that are being done right now at Alameda, Jewel, Bear Creek, whatever you want to call that intersection, as well as Alameda and Ohio, Mississippi. That intersection as well were done out of this same program. And those were the first two that we started last year.
Okay. Thank you.
So my understanding that somebody may have tried to call in, and is there somebody that would like to speak on this, Madam Clerk?
We do not see anyone in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Question, Counselor Beta. I'm trying to unmute you. 1 second. Bear with me, sir. It's not. All right, you're on. You're live.
Okay, thank you. So question here, I had information that this particular project was part of 7 others, so 8 total similar projects, and that the amount that had been appropriated in our budget was somewhere in the neighborhood of $975,000. This is what I was told a couple of weeks ago. And now my understanding, you're saying this project alone is going to be close to $500,000, give or take. How do these other projects going to work? I mean, I guess I'm not understanding how we could do 8 projects for $975,000 when one of them is going to cost close to $500,000.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Jay Hutchison to answer that question and to describe the budgeting thereof.
Yeah. And for the record, that answer had come from me because that is what is allocated in the 2020 budget for these intersections. Mr. Hutchison, you are unmuted. Ready when you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. This is an annual program that will go on for quite a number of years. The city owns and will be responsible to maintain and ultimately replace well over 100 different traffic signals around the city. As Mr. Whitaker mentioned, this program just started a couple of years ago, and the budget is intended to cover about 2 of those out of the funding of each year. So there may have been some confusion. The annual amount in that budget line item is $975,000. It'll probably only pay for a couple of signals a year. As Mr. Whitaker mentioned, we've got 2 under construction now. This is a third and another one we're looking at in the near future as well. In the capital improvement and preservation program, we listed what we anticipate to be the first, I think it's 8 or 9 signals that would be replaced. And perhaps that's where the confusion occurred, is that list is a multi-year list of 8 or 9, I can't remember the exact number of signals that would be replaced over a number of years. And the annualized budget is $975,000 on a continuing basis. Is that helpful, Counselor?
1 second, Counselor. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. That is helpful. The other question I had, I guess I wasn't clear on the answer that Counselor Johnson had, which is, has this money already been set aside and is being held in a fund, or is it going to have to come out of our general revenue? And so, I mean, that has a different impact on our budgetary process here, given our situation with the virus. So I'm not real clear. Is the money already set aside and ready to go, or is it going to have to come out of general revenue?
Thank you, Counselor. This is Jay Hutchison again, Director of Public Works. It is already budgeted in the capital improvement and preservation program, so it will not need to come out of reserves. It will not need to come out of the general fund. It's set aside as a part of this annual program in the capital improvement fund.
Okay, I see. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Counselor Franks, I'm going to go to you. This is in your ward.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind our viewers that we have the ability to call in. So if you're having trouble, I wanted just to read out that number again to you. You would call 1-669-900-9128. And then when it prompts you, put in the meeting number of 701-651-889. So if you are out there and you did want to comment about something, I just wanted to remind you that you could do that. Also wanted to take the opportunity to remind everyone that another way to be able to weigh in on all of these topics is through lakewoodspeaks.org. The nice thing about that is your fellow citizens can see your comments, and also counselors log in and the system records when we've looked at those comments. So certainly wanted to make sure that you were aware of all of that. And then all of City Council has the opportunity when the packet drops to ask staff questions ahead of time to make sure. So that's how we're trying to make sure to facilitate the meetings, make sure that we have the right people at the meetings to answer questions. So just want to encourage everybody. Obviously, earlier is better than later, and that just helps facilitate our meetings. And certainly appreciate that our knockdown light due to corrosion is going to be replaced. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Springsteen.
A couple of questions to follow up on Councilor Abel and Johnson. So one, since there's going to be a lot of grants and money available after the COVID crisis, is it possible that there might be infrastructure grants that might take care of things like this? Two, what does it cost us to just delay this a couple of months and see where we are with everything as the COVID crisis progresses? Why is this urgent that we do now? And three, if this came out of the capital improvement fund, can't we redivert those funds and reapply those funds elsewhere if need be? And shouldn't we consider that in the crisis? So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I respond?
Please.
Jay Hutchison again, Director of Public Works. Thank you for your questions, Councilor. There may be infrastructure grants. The federal government has not yet, as I understand it, done infrastructure grants related to the economic recovery from COVID-19. There's certainly been talk about that, and there has been in the past. Generally, those types of grants have not been for maintenance and replacement kinds of items. They've been for new facilities. Whether that'll be the case this time through. I don't know whether there will even be infrastructure grants. I don't know. There's certainly some debate about that in Washington, as I understand it. On the delay question, I should probably talk a little bit about schedule for this project. As you know, this ordinance tonight is related to acquiring the easements to be able to build the project. And that process takes a little bit of time. We don't anticipate the easement acquisitions to be completed until late this year. So construction, which is the largest part of the money, would be in 2021. So even if the acquisitions occurred and the council decided to defer the replacement of the signal, most of this money would not even be expended in 2020, and that deferral could occur at a later date when perhaps more is known about the economic situation in the city. However, this is also a location where we've had one pole fall down already under a windstorm because of the corrosion. The other 3 poles have suffered from corrosion as well. We do think that advancing this project makes the most sense, and this is the best funding source for that. That's what this funding source was set up for. So my recommendation would not be delay the action tonight. Even if you want to keep in the back of your minds, the option would exist months down the road yet to defer the construction. That's still an option available. But I think given the condition of the signal, that may not be a choice that we would be able to recommend. And then finally, your third question was about utilizing capital improvement funds for other kinds of needs if necessary. That's a question that you're a little bit ahead of us on. We don't have the full answer to that. Certainly the city manager has a number of us, the finance department and other operating departments, working on questions of that nature. Where are we going to end up? What are we going to need to do? How can we do it? And one of the questions that I'm sure that will be evaluated more thoroughly will be what opportunities might there be to move money between funds if necessary. Hopefully those are responses that are helpful to you, Councilor.
Yes, thank you very much.
Councilor Gutwein?
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. And also thank you to Councilor Franks for going through some of the other ways people can give public comment. I know this is a new experience for all of us. I also want to just remind everyone that you can email all of us, and our phone numbers are also available on the website as we go through this process together. I really wanted to just take a minute to thank staff for the planning that went into this program and the foresight to start setting aside these dollars so that we had this money already set aside in our budget so that when our, really critical infrastructure needs to be replaced, that we have that money set aside. We're not scrambling in the middle of a pandemic to come up with funding. So I really am proud of that and thankful for that planning and that responsibility of our staff. So thank you. And just also, especially because we know that federal and state funding for infrastructure is so limited and spread so thin that I certainly wouldn't want to be counting on federal or state dollars for critical infrastructure like that. I do not want to delay moving forward with this. We did have a considerable amount of information in our packet, and just looking at, if you see a huge traffic signal fall in the middle of a major road like Jewel Avenue, that's a safety concern. We have the budget for this. This is a critical function of the city. And I know that we are in the middle of the pandemic. That's on all of our minds. It's the most important issue that we're dealing with. However, I do also believe that our citizens are counting on us to keep the lights on. We have the money to do this. We've been responsible. We've been fiscally responsible. I'd like to get this done.
Councilor Abel?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Hutchison, I assume that since it's a multi-year program that we're doing the worst cases first and the worst cases were taken care of last year. This is the next worst, I guess, would be the way to put it. Is that correct? Is that how we set the priorities?
Thank you. We are setting priorities based on need. I'm going to ask Mr. Whitaker to spend just a moment talking about who is doing that for us and how that process is unfolding. It's underway now. Mr. Whitaker?
Mike Whitaker, City Transportation Engineer again. One of the first things when we rolled off this program was we hired a structural inspection firm. And because the city's so large and there's so many poles, we started off with our aluminum poles because they're a 25-year design life and they're some of our older signals in the city. And so that's how the two that are going on right now on Alameda were picked first, is out of that first round of inspections. The second round of inspections, we started on the steel. And that's when DeFrame and another one at Beach hit the top of the list. And we already had the other two in the row, so these are the next two we're doing. But we are going through the inspection process, and as we get better data, always trying to reprioritize which ones we think are the worst. The bad thing about aluminum is it's kind of a brittle fracture. So it's going to look good, and then the right windstorm comes along and it breaks, and you don't have much notice. Steel's a little easier where you got corrosion, you can kind of track it. Usually steel poles also, if they're starting to fatigue from windstorms too often, you'll start seeing hairline cracks above the welds, or the things that the inspectors are looking for. So steel usually gives us a little bit more notice than aluminum, but we are trying to do our best to prioritize what we think's next.
Well, you certainly can't reverse metal fatigue once it sets in. Jay really addressed my question when he mentioned that if we do have a severe problem with revenue in the coming months and perhaps a year, that we can hold off on some things. But when you have a steel pole that's likely to crash again at any time, I think it certainly needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. But I do think that we also should, in the next few months after we do this year's installment, take a look at our revenues. And I think from what Jay said, that gives us a good window in which to do that before we launch into next year and spend a couple million more. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Skilling, this is also in your ward.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. The reason that we don't delay is because I'm not going to let any of Lakewood residents or any of Green Mountain residents or the businesses be affected by a falling pole. You've all seen the pictures. We're not delaying on this. So hopefully that argument is put to bed as far as delay on this particular project.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I know it takes a little more of our time to have questions and comments, but I think it's needed and appropriate when we're on the air for people. Also, Jay, you gave us or sent me an email regarding another project at 14th and Carr, I believe, or 10th and Carr. On a pole. Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate knowing ahead of time. And I just wanted to mention to Michelle, if you do not have somebody in the queue to speak, the lady that called my home lives on the southwest corner of DeFrame and Jewel, and she was trying to get through. I can text you her phone number if you don't already have her in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bida.
Thank you, Mayor. I unmute.
Yep, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Just one question. How feasible would it be to remove those poles on a temporary basis, since they are somewhat of a hazard and convert this to either a four-way stop or a two-way stop with the stop signs on the frame, north and south, and then allowing Jewel to be a through fare. How feasible would that be?
I'm going to ask Mr. Whitaker to add to this. Typically, we don't put traffic signals in unless they improve conditions, because they also tend to cause accidents of certain varieties. In some cases, and when we look at intersections where we're going to replace traffic signals, we evaluate what the best tools are for the conditions that actually exist at those intersections. In fact, the 14th and Carr intersection that all of you received an email about is one where we're suggesting potentially removing the traffic signal because of the existing conditions. So this particular intersection probably needs traffic signals, and Mr. Whitaker can probably talk a little bit about the disadvantages and advantages of making the kinds of changes that you identified.
Yeah, Mike Whitaker again. On a short-term basis, if we lost another pole and we didn't have a spare one, we'd probably be running an always stop for a short period of time. Obviously, with the traffic volumes we currently have, locations that weren't eligible for always stops or that create too much congestion might work for a time. How quick traffic comes back is anybody's guess, I guess, right now. Two-way stop, I don't think would work just because of the curvature of the road. I'm not sure we have the sight distance where somebody coming off the frame would actually see some of the high-speed traffic coming from the Alameda direction very well. But yeah, in a pinch, we'd run a four-way stop if we had to, and traffic volumes would just either deal with it, or the queues or people would divert to other areas. Just depends on how quickly things re-ramp back up.
Was that even considered as an option on this intersection in lieu of the financial situation?
No, we started this kind of before the virus broke out, and Jewel typically carries, I think in that section we're about 35,000. So it's usually much more than an always stop would handle.
35,000, is that per day or per month or
per day?
In both directions?
On Jewel, yes.
All right. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councilor Harrison, then I have Councilor Franks and Mayor Pro Tem Skilling.
Okay, am I live? I guess maybe I am. Okay. My concern, I'm Miss Liability. There's 3 attorneys currently serving on our council right now. If you were representing a client whose child was injured as a result of a car running this red light or thinking that the signal light should be there, would the city be liable? I think because of the fact that previously we had a signal there, I think the very best thing we can do is put a signal back up there, get it done, get it safe, and get on with life. To try to drag this out and try to make 2 or 3 other kinds of traffic signals work just puts confusion in a corner that doesn't need it. 35,000 people, cars going through that intersection. That's a lot of traffic and a lot of risk. So I'll leave it up to you, councilors. What do you want to do? Take the liability, or do you want to go ahead and do what we need to do?
Councilor Franks.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I just, wanted to take another minute to say that I think it's important that I went into the dark here. I think that it's important for our citizens to know that the city manager and all of the staff and leadership roles are very cognizant of the financial situation. prior to this. I mean, we certainly dealt with that with the Colorado Mills Mall closing. So I don't want to downplay the financial aspects of this. I think that we have staff who is very in tune to the fact that we are a sales tax driven city. So I wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge the leadership of Ms. Hodgson for already getting staff very focused on that, first and foremost. Second thing I want to say is I live right off of Jewel. So I live literally just a few blocks from here. And so I can tell you that that street takes a ton more volume with that interchange that opened up. We've also added bike lanes to that. So to propose something that then changes that, that area, which has very high traffic going down to the Rooney School, up into a heavily density condominium complex and all along there. Again, I want to reiterate what Councillor Skilling said. This is no brainer for me. This is safety. This is core services. I would like to get to the question and get to the vote sooner. If somebody is certainly a no, I understand that. But this is important for all of our communities that we keep people safe. We don't disrupt traffic patterns in unusual ways where people are already very distracted. We have bike lanes coming through there, children walking through there to school. Certainly, I am absolutely in support of spending this money for a safety situation. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Skilling.
Yeah, I'll just follow up briefly on that. That section is 4 lanes wide. I mean, it's a large intersection by width. And then if you're coming eastbound, it does dip down. There's a hill there. You don't even see the liquor store until you're kind of up to that light. And on that left side, if you're heading eastbound, you've got a very busy shopping area. You've got, even now, especially now with the takeout, it's got a very busy. Let me just put it this way. A 4-way stop could never work there if for no other reason, forgetting safety issues, which would be paramount and the foremost, other issues would be you're going to see a backup all the way back on Alameda at the big 4-way. With that amount of cars, a 4-way stop would never work. It's just too big of an intersection.
Councillor Springsteen.
I just wanted to make an important point in a reaction to Councillor Harrison talking about the 3 attorneys on council. And I've heard this happen over and over again, that there's sort of this placement of more liability somehow on the 3 attorneys because we should know more about liability, and I'm not going to accept that anymore. We're not going to do that to each other. We all are weighing decisions based on what we think is best for the community, and this decision is being weighed on having enough funds to deal with what we're going to need to deal with after the COVID crisis. And, and what is the triage here? And there's no exact answer to this. Of course, we don't want a poll falling on anybody. And so I think most of us will vote in that regard tonight. But I'm not going to accept additional liability because I happen to be an attorney on council. And I don't want to hear people doing that anymore. So thanks.
So I'm just going to take a crack on that. I think there was no intention to put any kind of liability on anybody. Simply, we all come from a different viewpoint. We all have different hats. And I think Councillor Harrison was saying she wears an insurance hat, and she was simply saying we have attorneys who wear a different hat who may have a different perspective.
Just don't single us out that way, is what I'm saying. Thanks.
Councillor Vincent.
Call the question.
Well, let's just, can we hold off on that so we don't have to take a vote and just.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's hand is up right now. So I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem Skilling to make a motion, please.
I move for the adoption of ordinance 0-2020-8 on second and final reading.
I will second.
Councillor LeBear.
I was just voting on this. I'm ready.
Please do not. There's a motion second. Please do not raise your hands yet unless you have a question. Counselor Johnson?
Yes, I would just like to know if Michelle heard from the lady on the southwest corner. I did send you and Kathy and I believe Ben and Tim her phone number. If she wanted to weigh in, I just want to make sure that she had the opportunity. I have no idea what she wants to say.
Currently, we do not have anyone in the queue.
I gave you all her phone number.
So,
I don't.
Counselor Johnson, I don't think we can call her and plug her in. That's why she has to utilize the call-in system. But if you would like, we can certainly have staff follow up with her and address her questions.
Thank you. I have no idea what they are. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any more comments or concerns? Please cast your votes and raise your hands. So I currently have ayes being Paul, LeBeer, Rootline, Springsteen, Abel, Franks, Harrison. Somebody's blocking their face. Killing, Vincent, Beta, Johnson. So I have 11 ayes and 0 nays. Correct? 11 ayes and 0 nays. Thank you. Woohoo! Thank you, Bernadette, for lowering all the hands. That's awesome. All right. So will the clerk please read item 10 into the record?
Item 10, ordinance O-2020-9, vacating a portion of right-of-way for Yukon Street south of West 13th Avenue between blocks 67 and 70, Lakewood, as depicted in Exhibit A hereto.
I'll now open the public hearing, and Councilor Franks, thanks for doing this last time. I will reiterate, if you would like to weigh in on the public hearing, you can call 1-669-900-9128, 669-900-9128, meeting ID number 701-651-889, 701-651-889. This is one where we have received a lot of input on Lakewood Speaks, 14 comments as of this afternoon. I will again turn this over to Mr. Stanshu to kick it off. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I will open the public hearing or public comment portion. Is there anybody who has signed up to speak?
No one has signed up to speak.
I will close the public comment portion. Mr. Stanshu, thank you. Oh, there you go. You're right.
Thank you. This is for vacation of a portion of Yukon Street south of 13th. I believe there was a pretty good and clear PowerPoint presentation on Lakewood Speaks that was put together by the applicant. We are vacating approximately half acre of right-of-way. This right-of-way was platted in 1890, so over 130 years ago. The street was never fully constructed. As you can see on some of the maps, to the south, the right-of-way crosses the South Fork of Dry Gulch, so there really is no opportunity for it to continue. The applicant currently has a site plan and a plat under review by our planning department. Both of those applications are administrative. That is the reason why there have been no public meetings. They were not required. I know there were numerous comments on Lakewood Speaks about that. Both of those applications, again, are administrative. And the property is in an urban renewal area, so allocations are not required. The vacation is predicated on a plat being approved. And I want to make that clear because, again, there were a few comments relative to that. It really is somewhat of a chicken and egg scenario. The plat can't really be approved until the vacation is approved because the plat incorporates portions of the vacated right-of-way. So both more or less have to go together. The plat is under review. It has gone through at least one round of reviews. We've sent comments back, one of those comments being that the right-of-way needs to be vacated. If for some reason this right-of-way vacation is not approved tonight, the plat would have to be revised, the site plan would have to be revised. So we do need the vacation in order for the applicant to proceed with the current site plan and plat.
Thank you. So, Councillor LeBeer, you have your hand up, and this is in Ward 2, Councillor LeBeer and Vincent.
Can you hear me? Okay. So, first, I just want to acknowledge that obviously we all got a lot of messages in the last few days about this project. And I just want to acknowledge that there was some frustrations, I believe, from some of the neighborhood organizations about some of the communication with the developer. And I spoke with the developer and wanted to pass along some information that I received. Their point person who was responsible for communication for this project was let go, and that had impacted some of their communication efforts. However, they have shared with me that they are committed to speaking with our neighborhood organizations about their project. I spoke with their regional president again today, and he reiterated that to me again. And, I've personally found them to be very open and accessible. And I've always, and I did reach out to some of the neighborhood groups and spoke with them about this. I'm also happy to report that the developers, have reached out to our neighborhood organizations earlier today and are now working with them to establish an online meeting with our neighborhood groups to go over the project and get their input and feedback. So that's some good news. And just for a little bit of background information, we've kind of been scrambling this weekend because we kind of just heard about these frustrations as of Friday. So we're sorry about that, but we have been trying to scramble to work with everybody who's been concerned about this. And just want to clarify a few things. The developers did have a meeting set up with the WCCA, so the West Colfax Community Association, and they were going to fly into Colorado for that. However, due to the COVID issues, that obviously became not feasible. However, they did fly in to meet with Sharon and I. That was in February, towards the end of February. And we had a chance to speak with them. And at that meeting, Sharon and I, Councillor Vincent and I, we suggested that they work with 40 West Arts to look at art installations or projects that might be able to be included with their development. We went over a host of issues that we know our neighbors are always concerned and engaged with. We also suggested that they work with our neighborhood organizations. And again, I understand they're now planning a meeting with the neighborhood organizations. I think part of the confusion that some of us heard in Lakewood Speaks and emails, et cetera, had to do with the right-of-way discussion as being a part of the broader discussion about this development. These things have kind of been conflated together. I think, we on council have seen right-of-way vacations as, somewhat routine. And according to staff and frankly, the developer who I've been talking with about this project, it's my understanding they can build it without the right-of-way being vacated, but obviously that's not how it's currently set up, but it is something that is a possibility. And I don't know if that message has been very clear in the neighborhood. My understanding and view is that vacating the right-of-way isn't necessary, but it is practical for all three parties, the city, the developers, and the apartment across the street. The apartments across the street hope that the right-of-way will also be vacated. So that way they themselves can make landscaping improvements in front of their property and and other improvements. Sharon and I reviewed a letter provided by the apartments across the street from this development, saying that they were in support of this. So it's a road that the city essentially doesn't need, has no purpose for, and if it was vacated, become a private driveway between the old property across the street and the new development. So in conclusion, I've heard very little real opposition to the proposed vacation. But what I've heard is mostly just frustration with the communication. And so I do think they're having some improvements on that front. So because of that, I would support moving forward with the vacation. So thanks.
Thank you. Before we continue with council questions, Madam Clerk, you had your hand up, and that might mean you have somebody that wanted to weigh in.
Well, just to let you know, we do have a phone number in the queue. They have not pressed *9 to request to speak, but there is a phone number in the queue. And they may just need to hit the *9 if they want to speak.
Okay, so if you're looking to speak on this item 10, if you'd like to hit *9, we can get you in for public comment. Okay, we'll keep going with council comments and questions. If that does change, please let me know. Councilor Vincent?
Sorry, I don't have too much more to add as far as that. But I do want everyone to know that this is a very financially viable option in an area that is horrible. They've already ripped down one house, which was a crack house, quite frankly. And there's two other buildings there too. One has been vacant for over 8 years that I know of, and the other one for at least 5 years. There's homeless camps there. There's because I have visited back there. It's not that far. There are, to be frank, used condoms and needles and broken beer bottles there all the time. There have been people who have come from that area and have harassed people who've been trying to get on the light rail. They've followed people home. We've had some muggings, and it's come from that area. As Councilor LaVere said, we spent a lot of time, and I continue talking to people this morning. The businesses are fully in support of this, and this right-of-way vacation, either and maybe the city needs to speak to it more, either we accept responsibility for the maintenance and keeping it clear, or quite frankly, the win-win situation is for the developer. We have talked to them also, and they're very much on board on talking to the neighbors and also hearing their input and what it is that they want and some amenities for the area. So that's the only comment I have.
Mr. Stanchu, do you want to address the maintenance part of that?
There we go. Thank you. Yes. Currently, it is the city's responsibility to maintain that section. Honestly, I don't think there's been a whole lot of maintenance because that section of road gets minimal use other than by those 3 immediately adjacent properties. If the right-of-way vacation is denied, then the applicants can choose to make some modifications to their site plans. One of the modifications would be that they have to bring that section of street up to current standards, curb, gutter, sidewalk width, and most importantly, a turnaround or cul-de-sac at the end. Once those improvements are installed at the expense of the applicant, then the city would take over maintenance, and any future maintenance, replacement, or work there would be the responsibility of the city. If the right-of-way is vacated, then all the improvements and the future maintenance would be the responsibility of those individual property owners, and the city would be out of the picture.
Thank you. Councilor Abel?
Thank you, Mayor. unfortunately, no matter what we do in this place, Dry Gulch is going to continue to be home to folks without shelter. This proposed project is in the right place. It's catty-cornered to the rail station, and will serve the purpose we're looking for in our transportation-related areas. The only, I've read the comments and I appreciated the concern about the lack of working with the neighbors or explaining the project to the neighbors. But what really struck me was the comment that Dry Gulch is used as a recreation area too. People walk down there. Kids walk from 13th Avenue to the open school down that little stretch of road. And Mr. Sancho is very correct. It doesn't look like maintenance has occurred there in the last 20 years. I would like to see the access from 13th Avenue to the Dry Gulch basin in there continue to exist, with a sidewalk, something of that nature, so that folks who want to tramp around down there in the tramp might be a very bad choice of words. Who want to walk around there in Dry Gulch drainage, that's fine. Make it de facto urban space. There's too little open space. I'm sorry, de facto open space. There's too little open space in that area anyway. So perhaps the developer would consider allowing continued foot traffic through there, so folks can use that space. Kids can take the shortcut to school. But I do think it's the right place for it. And they are going to need a place to park. I would say, though, also that it's not very wise to make plans based on what you think a legislative body is going to do. That's a hard bet to make. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Abel, we do actually have very specifically within the ordinance that we will be retaining a number of easements, including public access. And we will relay to the planning department that through their review of the site plan, we would like to maintain a continuous, clear, open sidewalk from 13th Avenue all the way down to the Gulch.
Thank you. Well done.
Mayor Pro Tem Skilling, can I have a motion, please?
You may. I move.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, the phone in the queue has now raised their hand.
Okay. Let's go ahead and put them in. Good evening. Good evening. If you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Charles Habercorn at 13679 West Auburn Avenue.
Good evening.
I've been trying to get through since 7 o'clock, so it's been extremely hard to get through to this. I don't think, I don't understand a lot of how this works, and it's all new, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing to help involve this. And the only number I had, and I'm in Ward 4, and I think very much of our two council people there, Ms. Franks and Mr. Skillerin, but I have to shout out to Ramey Johnson's husband. She was the one number I had, and she was the one trying to get us through to you guys. She really cares about apparently having public comment by people, and I have to really go out of my way to say thank you for that. But what I want to say is this, and I know it's got nothing to do, but I've been in the city of Lakewood for 40 years, and I was a kid when city of Lakewood became a city. I admire what you people are doing for the city of Lakewood. I have such respect for you and the mayor and the staff, and Ms. Hodgson should be the governor of this state for the way that she runs our city. She is just fantastic. And you guys are all fantastic. You all deserve to be embraced. And thank you for what you do for us here in Lakewood. You really, really work hard. Every single one of you people. It's just amazing. And being here for 40 years, I watch you every week. I never come to the city council meetings, but I watch you. I see how hard you guys work. And I can tell you, Ms. Hodgson, you just really do one hell of a job. Thank you all. I don't mean to interrupt what you're doing. And Miss Johnson, thank your husband for helping us get our number through and getting the information so we can call. And Mayor Paul, thank you for what you do. And God bless all of you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Havercorn. We really appreciate that. And we're all learning together. So I know this is kind of clunky on how to get into the meeting and participate in public comment, but we're glad that you hung in, and maybe at our next meeting, we can get you in the queue earlier or figure out how to get you plugged in. But thank you for those comments. And certainly a time like this, we appreciate that. It looks like.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. We need a little bit more of that in our middle of our meetings, right?
I came from Ward 4. Don't be too shocked. That's how we are out there.
Counselor Beta's got his yes. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, where were we at? Could you please make a motion?
Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance 0-2020-9 on second and final reading.
Counselor Johnson, or Counselor Vincent, do you second that? Okay.
I did. Second.
We have a motion.
Sorry.
And Counselor Abel, you had your hand up right when Mayor Pro Tem was making that motion. There you go. Sorry.
Now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to suggest we give Mr. Havercorn another 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
Ms. Hodson's enjoying that as she's getting ready to save that Hodson for governor domain name.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Counselor Johnson.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this, but I'd like to explain why. We are dealing primarily with COVID problems right now. I'd like to see a little bit more time so that the developer can keep those promises and actually touch base with the neighbors and the community. Even though with this project, it's administrative and he doesn't have to, I hope that we as a city can get the message to developers, whether you have to or not. It goes a long way in the city with neighbors, our community, our residents, when you make a good faith effort to do that and at least give him the opportunity to do that. And so I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion and a second. Any more comments? I just like to say I think we've all learned a lot from this, and there's been a lot of activity over the weekend and a lot of passionate members in our community, and I appreciate that. And these things can be challenging. They can kind of be mixed into one another, whether it's a development question or an actual right-of-way or vacation question. I just want to echo what the two counselors from Ward 2, and we're certainly all well aware of this part of our city, and it is a challenge. And, keep in mind, I think 2 weeks ago, there was a murder a block away to the west, unfortunately. So this is, I think, a great opportunity. It's something that the community envisioned 15 to 20 years ago when they made the Wadsworth Station the signature station on the West Line. So I hope it can be a success. And I certainly, if the developer is listening, we really encourage you to get in with those neighborhoods. They are active and they're good people and they really do care. So I'm glad to support that. And with that, please cast your votes. Okay, and it looks like we have 9 ayes and 2 nays, the nays being Springsteen and Johnson. Did I have that? Did I have that wrong at all? Okay, so 9 ayes, 2 nays, nays being Springsteen and Johnson. All right, we're going to go to general business, and Councilor Franks, you had a follow-up to Ms. Hodson's report.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. Wanted to follow up on that Lakewood Economic Recovery Task Force. Certainly a shout out. I know that was a pretty fast turn time. Thank you guys for the outreach. But wanted to also ask about the invitees, if there is a way for council and others to feed in potential others to be included. I know we don't want to get that too broad, but are there ways we had talked about at the previous meeting, not just our business owners, but the nonprofits. And I know that we've got that separate fund, but there's going to be folks that don't qualify for that who may have good ideas. So is there a way for us to at least give recommendations or nominations to get additional folks added to that? And if not, just kind of frame that up so we understand if there's an opportunity for council to weigh in there.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that question, Councilor Franks. I'm just learning as I'm receiving this information. So we're looking at starting with a group of 24 selected Lakewood business leaders and resource partners. And it was deliberate. The selection was very deliberate. A few from our largest employers, from our smallest employers, medium employers, and then some of our community partners like the chamber, our business improvement districts, et cetera. So the first meeting was just 24 people of business and industry professionals. I think what the intent was, as I listened to council direction, was to have this roundtable and have them talking to each other as it relates to what are the issues in the short, medium, and long term related to this crisis, and how do we recover from that? I believe from that point, then there will be a report out to City Council and then a broader conversation. I don't believe we deliberated bringing in the nonprofits. This was just the business side in terms of the that side of our community, and the nonprofits were being handled in the other community grant program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure that, obviously fellow counselors in the community is aware. We have a lot of community leaders that do a lot of different types of work in our community. And I know they're looking to be equally engaged in this whole economic recovery piece. So I'll be looking for those opportunities, maybe if they can't be a part of the direct roundtable, that we get them engaged, and because there's going to be good ideas that come from all over. And we really want to, in this time where we're in an unprecedented time, to make sure that we get kind of all those ideas at least germinating in the hopper. So certainly want to thank you and thank Robert Smith for all the work that's been done. But as you guys move forward, please keep in mind that there's going to be those of us who want to find ways to plug additional people in, if not formally, in an informal way. That way we make sure that the best ideas percolate through that process and make it to council as a body. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilor Franks. Let me add a little more. I wonder if it would be helpful to go a step further. So to have this conversation with the business leaders, and then, because I know there are other groups in our community that are equally interested in doing something and just don't know what that might be. So I'm thinking about the faith-based, all of our faith-based partners, all of our service groups. Even folks from the schools are saying, what can we do to help our own community? So I wonder if we'll really throw that around from a staff perspective. I think it would be important for the business folks to have a conversation in and of themselves, but then to stretch that out and to talk with the other stakeholder groups of our community. I think if there's one thing I've heard over and over, that is so many people want to help and want to do something, but what's that thing? How do I help? We all know there's a need for volunteers, for human resources, for financial resources, and for goods, donation of goods and food, etc. So we'll really chew on that and see if we can't expand this effort to be more inclusive, if that's all right with you. I mean, you had given us the goal to really work with the business community, but it might make sense to broaden that and have broader conversations because of this wide interest in helping the community. Does that sound like something you want us to do?
It absolutely does. I mean, we have an entire community that is desperately looking at ways in which they can contribute. Economic recovery benefits us all. And so thank you for doing that. I appreciate you taking that feedback and helping to try to move that forward. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
And, to that point, it'll be a three-pronged approach. So you will have the immediate, right? What can we do right now, the second, kind of the midterm and the long term. And so I think you're going to have those different phases where people are going to be able to expand and come in.
And I'll be honest, if you've listened to the news lately, they're talking about this virus coming back potentially in different waves. So that's quite concerning. And we're starting to talk as a staff about the long game because originally, I thought a lot of us assumed that the virus would come and go, and it may take a little longer than we're thinking. So we need to think in those terms, as well as just look at our future and what is Lakewood going to be tomorrow, right, when it's past. So thank you for that.
Councilor Abel?
I believe if you'll go back to the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, we discussed identifying stakeholder groups at that time. And I think that's where we need to go next. We need to find out, we need to determine what groups we need to reach out to, consult them the way we're doing the business community, and try to meet as many needs, or at least entertain the notion of meeting as many needs as possible on all of this. There are folks out there of all stripes who need some level of assistance, not necessarily monetary, but we need to try to identify all the needs out there and see which ones then we can address.
Okay, so I'm going to go into council reports. And, these are kind of becoming the new thing, right? So I just want to make sure that we do everything that we can to try to protect the health and welfare of our neighbors and friends. And I know it certainly feels weird, and it probably for some is really starting to wear on them, potentially being isolated. So let's continue to check in on one another, see how our neighbors are doing. Let's do everything we can when we're in public to wear a mask and just try to protect the safety of our friends and neighbors. I want to thank the community for everything that you're doing. The outpouring of support is incredible. I want to thank our city staff, of course, for kind of, the long days and days that blend into the nights and the early mornings for really trying to get our city through this. Our first responders, people on the front lines at our grocery stores, all the people that are out trying to serve the community, but yet putting themselves potentially at risk. We appreciate you. The communication staff, who has done an incredible job, and well done on our first meeting with public comment. It was a little bit rocky, but I appreciated the team getting that done for us. So we talked about the 4 pillars at our last meeting, talking about the community grant program. That's one. We talked about the small business, the communications piece, and that's continuation of city staff trying to get the most relevant and effective information out on as many sources and platforms as possible. That last piece was lobbying. So we need to continue to hear from the community. We've seen a couple examples of rent assistance in other communities. We've also heard from our housing authority that in the stimulus packages, they have not had a lot of success. So we have reached out to our state and federal officials to help bring their cause to light. Also, council was notified of some opportunity to help with SNAP benefits, and I know some council members weighed in on that to try to increase and expedite those benefits. So things are changing fast. The PPE program, I believe, is now opening for independent contractors and sole proprietors. So you may want to talk to your financial institutions about that as we go forward. And please know that we're all here to try to help. And we may not have the answer. We may not have the solution. Whether it could be somebody who may be about to be evicted or somebody that's looking for a meal, please reach out to us. And if we can't help, we will try to find somebody who certainly can. And I know to a person, each council member is dealing with individuals and really trying to help through some challenging times. So I want to thank the council as well for that. I want to give a shout out to Tarumo BCT right there in Ward 1, their headquarters. And we got notice this week that they are thrilled to inform the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has granted Terumo and Marker Therapeutics AG emergency use authorization for a blood filtering system to treat adult patients with COVID admitted to the intensive care ICU with confirmed or imminent respiratory failure. So it gets a lot more medical, and I don't dare try to interpret what they do, but they're doing amazing things over there every day and trying to make a difference. So I want to do a shout out to Terumo and thank them for that. All right. Mayor Pro Tem, any reports?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a brief list as well. I want to remind everybody that the food banks are still very much open and in need of support. I think we talked about it at the last meeting, just anecdotally, that we're seeing locally, at least in our ward where we do some of the food pickups, that it's 3-4 times as busy as normal. And if anyone was watching the news over the weekend, you've seen the long cars in different places all over the country. So we need to keep doing that and keep stocking them as best that we can. There are a laundry list of places you can go, whether it's the Action Center, directly to the food drop-off centers. For example, we've got Foothills Elementary. We have a pantry here, the Foothills Foodies. They can always use your support. And they feed a lot of folks, not just the ones that are at that school. There's a lot of folks that depend on that food. The mayor mentioned it. As a small business owner myself and somebody who represents a lot of small businesses, one of the main things I've been doing over the past couple weeks is learning all I can about the CARES Act, PPP, different tax advantages that businesses can take advantage of now. It is critical right now, and obviously I don't think I have any conflicts in saying this, it is critical that small businesses right now go online, go to the bank, get signed up, get on the list. They are having all sorts of problems from technology. Everything keeps crashing to the process. It's somewhat of a mess. I'm told the funding is slowly coming out, but get in line. You need to get in line now. Even if you think you don't qualify, get in line. There's a lot of opportunities that you need to be taking advantage of. And then lastly, thank you to everyone who came to our ward meeting. We had, I believe, 29 participants on a Zoom, including Councilor Franks and I. And it was, I think, very successful. Probably the most successful, actually it was the most successful virtual ward meeting ever held in the city of Lakewood. So I can say that with a lot of confidence. And then last but not least, thank you to Kathy and all of staff for putting up with a lot of us calling. There's a lot of counselors working, sometimes harebrained ideas, and we're bouncing that off of staff and each other. Some of the questions might be silly, but we're here at our houses, most of us working from the couch, working from the house. And we just think of all these ideas. How can we help? What can we do? What kind of programs? What are places doing? What can we be doing? So they feel the brunt of most of those sometimes left field questions. So we appreciate you for that. And thank you to everyone in the community. Be well and be safe.
And just a real quick one to the Mayor Pro Tem. As you notice, he may not have very much hair left. And he threw out the gauntlet that said he would pay me to shave my head. So council, I want you to think about a way we could all maybe work on shaving heads and raising money for certain causes here within the city. I see Councilor Franks saying not a chance, but I would say that I would donate double what your fee would be to a nonprofit if we got our ladies involved. But seriously, it's that sort of thing. It's kind of fun, but that is something maybe council we could do and look at. I would probably even lose my eyebrows for a certain price if it went to help people keep in their homes. So,
and to be clear, I wasn't offering to pay you. I was offering to pay the charity of your choice.
Right. So you may see me not with no hair pretty soon, and I might be knocking on your door and saying I will pay you and give to your charity of choice. So I will stick with wards and Councilor Franks. We'll wrap up Ward 4.
Well, thank you, Mayor Paul, and I am happy to contribute, but I will find another way in which to do it. My hair is staying exactly where it's at. I really wanted to give a shout out to our communications group. I mean, being public comment, we all know and value. I mean, it's one of the foundations of us being able to do our work is to hear about, the community's thoughts on everything. So I appreciate all the various avenues that they are able to do that. After it was reported that we had someone trying to call in unsuccessfully, I did ping staff behind the scenes to make sure that we were not having a technical problem. And it was confirmed we were not having a technical problem, but we do know that there's a learning curve to this technology. And I am one of those counselors that has the access to the Zoom meeting, so I can schedule Zoom meetings. So I want to offer to folks out there, I'm happy to schedule a few different ones throughout the evening, the next week or two, and kick those off in a real safe way where folks can join, they can practice in a real low stress environment, and you could call in, you could try to get in through the Zoom meeting. So I'm happy to do that, to set up those kind of test meetings to float the balloon, so to speak. And since my own person in my ward did not know my phone number, I'm going to read it out for them so everyone knows you can reach me at 720-515-6501 or bfranks@lakewood.org. Please reach out. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable with these remote meetings, these virtual meetings, and we're here to help you make sure that you can still contribute in whatever way you're comfortable with. So thank you very much.
All right, Ward 5, I'm going to unmute you both, and you were just told that your ward meeting was not as fantastic as Ward 4's.
Oh my gosh, how could anyone say that? We had 122 views on our Facebook, so that was pretty good. Dana, take it from there. I do want to make a comment when you're done.
Oh, well, we did talk a little bit about our ward meeting. I don't know that I didn't know it was a contest, I guess, but I would say that we did have a great meeting and really appreciated Sergeant Alish answering a lot of community questions, and we really learned a lot, and I felt a great amount of comfort knowing that he and all of our agents have all the PPE that they need. Karen, if you want to continue, and then I have just a couple other items too.
I want to, I don't know if anybody still takes the Denver Post, but I saw a really exciting article about one of our Ward 5 people and an RTD district person, Natalie Minton, has been sewing masks frantically. She's made well over 500 masks currently for RTD people. They really, really need them. And I would throw out this offer. I'm going to be contacting Natalie to see if she needs help with that project. But anybody on council, that if you don't have masks and need them for either you or your family, please call me, please get hold of me, and I will be happy to sew them for you. Now, I get to choose the fabric, so you have to wear what I make it out of. and it will be a joy. That's all I have. Thank you.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Seems like by the end of this, we're all going to have a whole new look with shaved heads and Karen's masks. Okay, couple things. Just also wanted to plug again for the Action Center. There's so many different ways to help, but this is the one that I'm just trying to talk about over and over again because I think it's one of the biggest ways that we can help right now. Our neighbors and the growing number of our neighbors that need food and supplies. So if you can help or volunteer at the Action Center, it would be incredible if you can pitch in that way. I also have been getting questions about when people will be getting their stimulus checks. We in Lakewood, of course, have nothing, no control over that in any way, but do want to let people know that you can go to irs.gov/coronavirus to get more information about when you'll be getting a stimulus check. The first round was supposed to be going out today. And then finally, we will be having a virtual Earth Day on Saturday. It is going to be from 10 a.m. to noon. You can get more information about it on lakewood.org/Earth Day. And there's all kinds of things that you can do ahead of time, especially if you have kids or extra free time on your hands right now. There's great ways to get involved and get engaged with our community, even though we won't be able to be there together. So again, that's lakewood.org/Earth Day.
Thank you. Let's go to Ward 1. I will unmute you both. Jump on in.
I thank you. I'd first like to really give kudos to Kathy Hodson. Every single day, she sends us a very nice update. And those updates have a good deal of information in them. They take an awful lot of time. And I want to thank you, Kathy. I've learned a lot from them. Thank you. I'd also like to say that we keep hearing about small acts of kindness all over. And they are far, far more contagious than this virus. And we will overcome this virus. There's an interesting phenomenon that's going on. It started on the East Coast, and every night people are howling. And to be honest with you, Walt and I have been howling. We were the only ones around here. And then last night, they were all over the place. And the funny thing about it is you are connected with your neighbors 2 and 3 blocks away. And it's kind of fun. I think that's a neat thing. I'd also like to mention that Vitalant does need blood donations. You can go online and schedule an online appointment. They have done this in a way that it's very safe for both the staff and for the donor. You've mentioned about going to your banks. I can't speak to all of them, but the bank at Colfax and Wadsworth only has drive-through. So I'm not sure if you can call them in addition to the loans and things. And then the last thing I'd like to say is that Charlie and I are coming of age, and we are working on a Zoom meeting for Ward 1. And I reached out to Dr. Johnson, and he is going to join us with an update and allow for questions and directly to him. And I really want to thank him for his willingness to join us. I think that goes a long way. Charlie, it's yours.
Well, there's not a lot to add to that. We are going to have a virtual meeting, town hall, and Barb, I will be asking you to step up and help me out with that. Everyone that I see across the city is looking for someone else to help. And I think our community has put its best foot forward. And one of the biggest pleasures I've had lately is to see folks out on the street, walking on separate sides of the street, greeting each other. You know, we're being our neighborhoods are much closer now than they were a few months ago. And I think it's because we're all responding in such a magnanimous way. So thank you, Ward 1, and thank you, Lakewood. Y'all make us look really good.
All right, we'll go to Ward 2. Jacob and Sharon.
Okay. I can't repeat enough what everybody else has said also. It's been very heartwarming in the community. It really has. I've seen people I didn't even know, and they were my neighbors. That was interesting. I do want to let folks know that I gave a bunch of bandanas to the shelter, why am I going blank? The Action Center. Thank you. To the Action Center. I have some more. So if anybody needs some or wants me to drop off some to churches or anything like that, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to do that. I want to send out a personal thank you and shout out. Some of you may know I worked at American Medical Response, AMR, and you have probably seen them all over the TV. They are in the hot spots. They are in New York. They're in Los Angeles. They're in the big cities as well as small cities. So I just want to say thank you. These people, I know them, and they will run into danger without the blink of an eye. And I know they care for other people oftentimes other than themselves. So on a personal level, I just want to tell them to be careful because I would like to see them again. Let's see. I think, and we had a Ward 2 meeting too, and it turned out pretty well, and people were very appreciative. So we're going to keep Zooming till I can start seeing people in person again. Great. And does anybody else but me feel like Darth Vader with those masks on, or is it just me?
No, it's for sure.
Philip, you got me?
Yep, you got you, Jacob.
Okay. So yeah, over 100 views on our online ward meeting. So not a competition, I guess, but we're trying. It turned out pretty well, and the neighbors really were appreciative that we were making an effort to try to continue communication with them. I just want to give a quick shout out to the mayor. We had a difficult week in the last couple of weeks with crime and shootings and issues in the ward. And frankly, I've never seen the level of frustration on Nextdoor and some of the emails that Sharon and I have seen. There are some people that are very frustrated with some of the stuff that's happened in our city. And obviously there's only so much we can do. But I appreciate the mayor helping out with that situation, and I also just appreciate the residents' concerns. And I just wanted to mention it to the full council because, while we're thinking about COVID and all the other issues, obviously there are a lot of issues that are also continuing to impact our residents. And I just wanted to stay in the back of our minds to keep thinking about ways that we can help address those concerns in the future. And now, obviously. And then also, I just want to give a shout out, like a lot of other people have, to our staff. They've done a great job of keeping the gears moving, and Kathy for all the updates. And I appreciate all that. And I just want to thank everybody for their hard work. So thanks.
All right, Ward 3, bring us home.
I don't have anything to add other than to say thank you to all of our employees, and especially our police officers and police agents on the street for all the added risk that they're taking for us. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
It's funny you say that, Mike, because I saw some first responders at a neighbor's house over the weekend, and it struck me that they were in full body gear, respirators, face masks, and also some police in face masks. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of them for putting themselves at risk to serve our community and the safety in our community. I also wanted to shout out to all you parents out there like me who are trying to work and be teachers at the same time with children home from school, and just say be patient and enjoy that time with your kids, that homeschooling you might never have had. The Jefferson County is putting out surveys to parents to try to improve on that experience, and so look for those. Also, just enjoying seeing people enjoying the open space in Jefferson County and Lakewood that we have worked so hard to protect, and we see how very, very important it is right now in our community. Ward 3 has not yet put together a ward meeting virtually, in part because we've been working on getting a meeting set up with Dr. Sheckley over Zoom regarding the 5G issue, which took place on Saturday. And for people who want to see those slides or see the meeting, reach out to Mike or I, and we can get you that information. He gave a wonderful sort of background on the entire 5G issue, and which, is a longer term health and safety issue in our community. But that meeting was put together by citizens. It was citizen driven, paid for by citizens. And I think it's really important for us to hear from different experts on different issues like that. I hear tonight that the city hired a structural inspection firm for the traffic light signals. And I think we should do something like that to hire an aesthetics firm or somebody else who can give us info on 5G about, where should towers go and how to minimize the impact. I think it would be worthwhile once we get past all of this. I've been working with citizens to develop some suggestions on the 5G ordinance. And boy, there are some people who are really, really involved in this and really concerned. And I'm so proud of them for all the work they've done. And so hopefully we'll have some good suggestions for the city. But Mike and I will put together some kind of virtual ward meeting very shortly, and we will let you know when that's going to happen. And please, everybody, stay safe and healthy. We appreciate everything this community is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Hodson, Mr. Cox.
I just want to say one thing, and that is thank you so much for acknowledging staff. I just have to really recognize the communications team. They have done an amazing amount of work over the last, I don't know, what's it been now, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So thanks to Ben, thanks to Stacy, and all of the folks on the communications team. They really have leaned in to get the work done. So thank you.
All right. Mr. Cox, anything? Nope. Ms. Millard? And Bernie, you did a great job manning the phones. Thank you very much. You didn't have to turn anybody off. So I want to thank everybody. We will adjourn this meeting at 9:25 p.m. So well done, council. Be well, be healthy. Take care.